What if I told you one of the greatest rock and roll albums ever recorded was made by a man who was simultaneously broke, legally cornered, and hiding the master tapes from the label that owned him? No drugs brought him down, no band implosion, no personal scandal, just a piece of paper he signed at 23 years old because he did not know what one word meant. That word was publishing, and by the time he figured out what it actually meant, a corporation the size of a small country owned the copyrights to every song he had ever written, and was coming to take them. He had a wife, he had a daughter, he had $500,000 in personal debt, and an album sitting half-finished in a studio that the label was threatening to seize. So he did the only thing left. He burned the contract down. If you haven't done so, like and subscribe. Here is how Tom Petty declared bankruptcy in the middle of making Damn the Torpedoes, and walked out the other side with everything. To understand what Tom Petty was up against, you have to start in Gainesville, Florida in 1961. He was 10 years old. His uncle was working on the set of an Elvis Presley film being shot nearby in Ocala, and he brought the boy to watch. Petty stood on that set and saw something that rearranged him permanently. Not the fame, the thing itself. A man standing in front of people, playing, and the room going electric. He went home, and there was nothing else after that. He taught himself guitar, he formed bands. By the early 1970s, he had a group called Mud Crutch that was playing bars across Florida, living in a rundown house they called Mud Crutch Farm, grinding through sets for crowds that had no idea they were watching something that would matter. In 1974, Petty packed everything into a car and drove cross-country to Los Angeles with nothing but demo tapes and the kind of belief in himself that looks like delusion until it suddenly doesn't. He walked up and down Sunset Boulevard cold-calling record labels. In the first week, he had 7 offers. He signed with Shelter Records, a boutique label co-owned by Leon Russell and British producer Denny Cordell. He was 23 years old. He was so relieved to have a deal, any deal, that he did not read what he was signing with any real comprehension. He trusted the people across the table. He assumed the contract was standard. He assumed the terms were fair. He signed away his publishing rights for $10,000, and he had absolutely no idea what publishing rights were. Here is what publishing actually means. Publishing is not putting your songs in a book. Publishing is the copyright itself, the legal ownership of the composition. Every time a song plays on the radio, every time it appears in a film or a commercial or a television show, every time it gets covered or sampled or licensed for anything at all, the publisher collects. Not the artist who performed it, the publisher who owns it on paper. Petty later told Rolling Stone exactly what he had been thinking when he signed. He said, "I swear to God, I thought that publishing meant putting my song in a songbook. I had no idea that it meant owning the copyright and that I would never see a dime for it. $10,000, one signature, every song he would ever write." Mudcrutch imploded not long after arriving in Los Angeles. Cordell dropped the band but kept Petty, and kept guitarist Mike Campbell at Petty's insistence. By 1976, Petty had assembled a new group around a rehearsal session with a collection of Gainesville transplants. Benmont Tench on keyboards, Ron Blair on bass, Stan Lynch on drums. He recognized the band immediately and pulled them into his existing deal. Denny Cordell produced the debut. Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers were born. The first album came out in 1976. It went almost nowhere in America. Radio ignored it, but something strange happened in England. The British audience heard American Girl and Breakdown, and responded as if the band had been playing there for years.
Somewhere else, after all, it was a great big world. Feeling like I do, you said all there is to say.
When the Heartbreakers toured the UK, crowds rushed the stage. It was the kind of reception that convinces a band they are not imagining things. Back home, the second album, You're Gonna Get It, came out in 1978 and went gold. The momentum was building. The band was tightening into something formidable. Everything pointed forward, and then the floor opened up. ABC Records, which distributed Shelter, was sold to MCA in 1979. The deal transferred Shelter's contracts along with it, which meant Tom Petty's contract, including the publishing agreement he had signed without understanding, now belonged to MCA Records. one of the largest entertainment conglomerates in the world, a company that had no particular affection for Tom Petty and every legal right to treat him as an asset it had just acquired. Petty did the math. He had 2 gold albums. He had been working for 3 years. And for every dollar he had seen, the people who held that publishing deal had seen 10 times as much. And that would be true for the rest of his life if nothing changed. He said he would not be bought and sold like a piece of meat. MCA said he didn't have a choice. But here's the turn. MCA did not just want Tom Petty to honor his old contract. They wanted to own him completely and permanently. Under the terms Petty had signed with Shelter, the publishing deal gave whoever held those rights a claim on his songwriting income for the foreseeable future. MCA intended to exercise every inch of that claim, and they had the legal machinery to do it. Petty went to meetings. He sat across from label executives and listened to what they were offering, which was nothing. The message, delivered in the polished language of corporate music, was simple. You will finish your record, you will release it on our terms, and you will be quiet about it. One executive made it even plainer. Petty recalled the conversation later without flinching. The man told him, and this is the version Petty repeated for the rest of his life. Look, kid, here's what's gonna happen. You're gonna make this record and you're gonna shut up. Petty told him he would sell peanuts on the street before he handed over another song. He was not bluffing, but he also had almost nothing to fight with. He hired managers Tony Dimitriades and Elliot Roberts. They looked at the situation and saw one path forward that MCA would not be expecting. Petty had already been paying for the recording of his 3rd album out of his own pocket, specifically so that MCA could not claim the tapes. That decision alone had put him $500,000 into personal debt. A man with a wife, a daughter, and no functioning income had borrowed $500,000 to keep a corporation's hands off his music. But the publishing rights were still exposed, and MCA knew it. The strategy Petty's team landed on was aggressive and legally elegant. Chapter 11, Bankruptcy. If Petty filed for bankruptcy protection, a court would have authority to review and potentially void all of his existing contracts, including the publishing deal and the recording contract. The Bankruptcy Code treats agreements like record contracts as executory contracts, deals where both sides still have obligations to fulfill. A bankruptcy judge can reject those, walk away from them entirely. MCA had not seen this coming. They had expected a negotiation. They had expected Petty to blink. On May 23, 1979, Tom Petty filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. He was recording one of the greatest rock albums of his generation, and he was simultaneously a man in bankruptcy proceedings. Both things were true at the same time, in the same building, on the same days. The band did not hide what was happening. They called it the Lawsuit Tour and went out and played to raise money for the legal fight. They made t-shirts. The shirts read YMCA across the front. Fans bought them. The band wore their bitterness in public and dared the label to make it worse. And the tapes for the album, the recordings that MCA was threatening to seize, were physically moved. Hidden somewhere, the label could not get to them. Petty was not going to let $500,000 of his own money walk out the door in a corporate lawyer's briefcase. MCA sued him for breach of contract. Petty counterfiled. The whole thing sat in front of judges while the album waited. But here is what nobody tells you about that moment. MCA was suddenly scared, not of Tom Petty specifically, of what Tom Petty had just demonstrated was possible. If a mid-level rock artist could use bankruptcy law to void a recording contract, every unhappy artist on every major label roster now had a roadmap. The implications were not contained to one band from Florida, they were systemic. And MCA's lawyers understood that better than anyone. The corporation had signed up for a fight with one stubborn songwriter. They had accidentally stumbled into a legal precedent that could restructure the entire industry's relationship with its artists. That changed the math entirely. MCA blinked, not graciously, not quickly, but they blinked. The label agreed to tear up the old contract. They released Tom Petty from the deal he had signed as a 23-year-old who thought publishing meant a songbook. They gave him his publishing rights back, and then, because they still wanted the album, because they could see what was on those hidden tapes, because the business logic was undeniable, they created an entirely new record label from scratch just to re-sign him. They called it Backstreet Records. The deal was worth $3 million. Tom Petty had walked into those negotiations with nothing. No leverage on paper, no money, no legal standing that wasn't being actively contested in court. He had a half-finished album, $500,000 in personal debt, a bankruptcy filing, and a band selling t-shirts with a corporate logo on them as a political statement. He walked out with his songs. Damn the Torpedoes was released on October 19th, 1979. It entered the Billboard 200 and climbed to number 2. It spent weeks there. It was certified triple platinum in the United States. It contained Refugee, which became one of the defining rock singles of the era, and Here Comes My Girl, and Don't Do Me Like That. Which had been sitting in a drawer since the Mudcrutch days, written in a North Hollywood rehearsal space, named after a phrase Petty's father used to say. The album that a corporation tried to seize became the album that made Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers into one of the biggest bands in America. You probably owned this album, or your older brother did, or it lived in your parents' car for 3 years, and you knew every word of Refugee before you knew anything about the story behind it. That is exactly how it was supposed to work. The music arrived clean. The war that produced it stayed invisible. But here is the kicker. MCA thought they had solved the Tom Petty problem. They had a new contract, a new imprint, a newly cooperative artist, and a triple platinum album to show for it. The difficult chapter was behind them. It was not behind them. 2 years later, in 1981, MCA decided that Hard Promises, Petty's follow-up album, would be the first record they sold at $9.98. The standard retail price at the time was $8.98, $1 more, a rounding error by any corporate calculation. Petty refused to release the album. He told anyone who would listen that if the industry did not hold the line on pricing, records would eventually cost $20. He was not wrong about that, as it turned out, but that is a different story. What mattered in 1981 was that Tom Petty had just survived a bankruptcy filing and a legal war with a multinational corporation, and he was now holding his album hostage over a single dollar. He even announced he would rename the album 898 in protest. MCA remembered what happened the last time they pushed this man into a corner. They sold the album at the standard price, and still the story did not end there. Because the thing about Tom Petty and MCA was that neither of them was ever going to fully trust the other. The bankruptcy had worked. The New Deal had worked. The albums were selling, but the relationship was built on the memory of a war, and that memory does not simply dissolve because the lawyers stopped billing. By the early 1990s, Petty had found a way out. He negotiated a secret deal with Warner Brothers Records, a deal reportedly worth $20 million. MCA agreed to release him in exchange for a greatest hits package with 2 new tracks. One of those new tracks was Mary Jane's Last Dance. It became a hit. MCA took the hits package and sold 12 million copies of it while Petty walked out the door. His first album for Warner Brothers was Wildflowers, released in 1994. It went triple platinum. The corporation that had threatened to take everything ended up handing him the commercial runway he needed to make some of the best work of his life. And the publishing rights, the thing that had started all of it, the thing a 23-year-old from Gainesville had signed away for $10,000 because he thought it meant a songbook, those belonged to Tom Petty for the rest of his life. He died on October 2nd, 2017. He was 66 years old. The cause was an accidental overdose of prescription medication taken for a fractured hip he had been performing on for months without telling anyone, because he did not want to cancel on the people who had bought tickets. That detail matters. It is the same instinct that made him pay $500,000 out of pocket rather than hand his music to a corporation. The same instinct that made him file for bankruptcy rather than shut up and comply. He did not leave things undone. He did not back down from what he believed he owed. The songs are still out there. American Girl, Refugee, Free Fallin', I Won't Back Down. That last one almost writes its own commentary at this point. somewhere in the accounting of all of it, in the royalty statements and the licensing fees and the streaming numbers that would have been unimaginable in 1979, the publishing rights are still generating income, still paying out, still worth exactly what Denny Cordell knew they were worth when he slid that contract across the table to a kid who had never heard the word used in that context before. The difference is that now they pay Tom Petty's estate, not the corporation. Here is what you should take from all of this. Tom Petty did not win because he was the most powerful person in the room. He was never the most powerful person in the room. He won because he was willing to lose everything to avoid losing the thing that actually mattered. The corporation had the lawyers. The corporation had the contracts. The corporation had a catalog of precedents for how these situations resolve, which is to say quietly in their favor, with the artist eventually accepting the terms and getting back to work. What the corporation did not have was someone willing to file for bankruptcy in the middle of making an album, hide the master tapes, put on a tour to raise money for a legal fight, and sell t-shirts mocking them by name to the people buying tickets. They had never seen that, and they did not know what to do with it. The music survived because the man refused to be reasonable about it. That is the whole story. Every song you have heard with his name on it, every time Refugee came on and you turned it up without thinking about it, exists in the form it exists because a kid from Florida thought publishing meant a songbook, figured out what it actually meant, and then spent the next 2 years making sure nobody could ever do that to him again. Now you know the full story. The next time I Won't Back Down comes on, you will know he was not just singing. Take that feeling and do something with it. Hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't. And to my subscribers, the ones who already know, you have always been worth fighting for. You rock.